Hi everyone, this is Elizabeth from Kasiwa82. Thank you so much for stopping by. This video is going to be a really quick one showing the journals that I'm using in 2016. I tend to use a different setup every year, but for the most part I end up with something very similar because I've kind of figured out over the years what works and doesn't work for me. So what you see in front of you are the 4 journals that I'm using as of March. So these are the 4 that I've been using for 3 months of the year so far, and they're working out so well that I pretty much am convinced that this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the year. That might change, but that's currently where I'm at. Now, what I'll do is I'll make a video with specific flips of the journals that you see here. For example, these 2 are the Midori Style Traveler's Notebook. Both of these are ones that I've made using relatively cheap supplies that I happen to have at home, and I'm using them as sketchbook/art journals, and I'll show you a flip of those at some point soon. So let's talk about these 2. This is a basic graphic composition book that you can pick up at pretty much anywhere that sells stationery, and especially kids supplies, school supplies. This is one of those composition books that, if you remember using in school, I tend to use grid paper. This is where I do any scheduling, planning, and essentially the morning pages as in my brain dump. Now, I don't use a planner per se because on paper, because I do all of that electronically. So this particular one is the one that I use for planning and, as I said, kind of getting stuff out of my brain. And if you're interested, I can go into exactly what I use this one for. This is a new addition for me. Let me just get some of these out of the way. This journal is the old 3-ring binder. I believe it's from Franklin Covey back in the day when I used to do all my planning on paper. I use the Franklin Covey system, and it has worked really well for me. I no longer use that. As I said, I'm pretty much doing everything electronically when it comes to planning and scheduling. But I have one of these journals laying around. And so what I decided to do is, rather than just throw it away or, recycle it or whatever, I'm doing something that is different for me this year. So this is primarily the thing that I'm doing very differently this year. I tend to always have a journal with me when I'm in the house, when I'm out of the house, when I'm traveling, whatever. There's always a book in my hand that I can write on, that I can sketch in. This particular one, this 3-ring binder, stays on my nightstand. So I'm calling this my nightstand journal. And what I'm doing with this is I used to do paper scrapbooking, something else I don't do anymore. I have primarily, when I scrapbook, gone the digital route. But because I used to do paper scrapbooking, I have a lot of cardstock in my stash. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and taken, which is an 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock, and just cut them in half, punched holes in them, and I've stuck them into this particular binder. And what I'm doing with it, it stays by my nightstand. So what happens is, if you follow along on my blog or on my Instagram account, which I'll leave links for down below, you'll know that one of the things that I do is I read a lot of graphic novels. So what is happening with my nightstand journal is primarily, well, not primarily, I use it solely at night, right before I go to bed. And whatever it is that I am currently, whatever magazine or graphic novel that I'm currently looking at, right before I turn off the lights, I do some sketching. So again, it's not meant to be completed pages by any sense of the word. These are basically ways of just practicing some hand-eye coordination and just making sure that, what I'm looking at in front of me is something that I'm sketching. Some of them, like this particular page I just invented, this particular one has got some stuffed animals that I have lying around. But pretty much everything else that you see in this journal comes from graphic novels that I'm looking at. I do modify the pages. So, for example, that's from the Sandman series. This is from the Oku series, which I would highly recommend. And they tend to be late at night. I'm not looking for completion. I'm not looking for something that is going to be, it looks pretty. This is primarily for me as a way to practice sketching, practice just doing a little bit of drawing what I see. Some work better than others. For example, there were chin issues on that one. But, there's nothing precious about it. I don't use expensive supplies. I believe this was not even a pen that was made for paper. The pen I've been using all this point was something that was actually made for an erase board. And I just ran out of the ink on that one. So I've been switching to something else. But as you can see, essentially, it's very simple. I've got some more pages in the back, but that's all I'm doing. If you take a look at times, sometimes I remember to write down the time. That's at 9:25, that's at 10:15, this one's at 10:34. It's a way to just keep practicing, right? Because one of the things that I notice is the more I spend time actually looking at something and practicing drawing it, the better my technique and skill is when I come to doing something that I am actually creating in my art journal. So this is essentially a doodle pad, if you will, that I keep in my nightstand. And I try, again, if you'll take a look, I don't do one every day. It just so happens that, when I am, when the mood strikes me and I've got something that is intriguing to me, I want to try and capture that, for example, I just go ahead and I don't have to get out of bed. I don't have to go find something and figure out, which book am I going to use? Which pen am I going to use? It's there. There's usually a cheap pen. I just replace that one with one of these multicolored pens. And that works really well. I'm finding that this is something that is not precious and it's not complicated. It's one pen. There's no color. There's no paint. There's just nothing other than a piece of paper, a pen, and what it is I'm trying to capture. So my Nightstand journal, it's working great. I do believe that this is one that is going to stay with me going forward. I've never done one of these before, and I'm loving it. So those are the journals that I am currently using in 2016. Like I said, I've gone through 3 months in all of these, and they are working really well for me. If you have any particular questions on any one of the journals or any specific thing you'd like me to go into in more detail, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know how you're working 2016 in your journals. What supplies are you using? Are they complicated? Are they not? Any tips, any advice would be great. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.